welcome to Genre Exposure, a film podcast. Join us as we explore the wide world of cinema, broaden our horizons one movie at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Dustin, and as usual, I am here with Jason.
Hey, everyone.
What's up, my dude?
I am doing good, man. How about yourself?
I am doing pretty good, actually.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I'm all hipped up on L81, which is
Oh, God.
something most listeners may not know about.
I'm sorry.
If you're a connoisseur of ginger ale like myself, here in Kentucky, we have a local version that is pretty much just ginger ale infused with caffeine, right? So, yeah.
I'm not a fan of it myself.
A late one, as they call it in the parlance around here. Yeah. If you're ever passing through, it's something to look for in a gas station. And then either enjoy or be disgusted.
Yeah. Probably the latter. But hey, to each their own.
Hey. Well, today we are talking about your pick, Jason. You have selected for us Flesh+Blood from 1985. Finally getting us talking for a while about some Paul Verhoeven.
Yeah.
First time watch for me, which was cool.
Awesome.
A lot of interesting things going on with this movie.
There's no way you hated this movie, though. There's no way you hated this movie.
I don't know. We'll see when we get to the end there.
I will flip this huge fucking table over if you hate this movie.
The end of genre exposure. Flesh+Blood. But first, we're going to do all our usual stuff, talk about what we've been watching. I'm finally going to finish my flu journal today. Committed to that.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and do that? You want to talk about that?
I will, but first, I need to let everyone know that we are part of the Prescribed Films podcast network.
Oh, yeah, we are.
And we love it. And there's all kinds of other cool shows you could be listening to fill your ear holes with, focused on different types of movies, different genres. There's even some in there that just aren't about movies at all and just cover some other cool topics.
What?
So,
There's podcasts that aren't about movies?
surprisingly, yes.
Whatever.
So go check that out. Check out all our podcast neighbors. Show them some love. Find yourself some cool stuff to kill a little time with.
Awesome.
But yes, let me get into this. So I have 2 films left to discuss from my flu escapades. I saved these for the end. It was more new stuff. So first, I want to talk about Megan. Finally watched it.
Okay. Yeah, what you think about that one?
Watched the uncut version, of course.
Obviously.
That was one big thing I was waiting on. Unsurprisingly, I fucking loved it. I thought it was super fun, super great.
Yeah, I like this one too. So
Nice.
we're in agreement on this one.
I think she's a new horror icon, and I'm here for it. I thought the story was pretty evenly wrapped up by the end. I don't know that it needs a sequel.
It doesn't need a sequel.
But
we're getting one.
It's getting it, and I'm there for it, and I'll be there for it day one.
Yeah.
It was super awesome, so much fun. And even the way they built the story of like her relationship to the kid, and how it like shifted, and that she started to see everyone else as a threat to her, and that like it's the classic story of like an AI thing gone wrong, where it's like the well-intentioned logic of it eventually grinds itself down into like chaos and mayhem.
Right.
And then once she goes off the rails, God, it was so fucking fun. Like when she's just slaughtering people through the office building.
Yeah.
Fucking loved it, dude.
It's a fun movie.
Great.
It's a very fun movie.
Don't have a lot else to say about it. You know, it's not revolutionary.
No.
It's not going to change the world.
It's just a fun movie.
Solid movie, man.
Sometimes it's all you need.
Yeah. Speaking of other new stuff, gotta talk about the Nun II.
Okay.
Yeah, keeping up with my Conjuring verse love. What to say about this one? It is very much a Conjuring movie. I think it's
For good or ill.
for good or ill. I think it's decidedly all right. I'm gonna say it is Michael Chavez, which is kind of like, you know, he came in on Curse of La Llorona,
Yes.
and then they sort of like have grandfathered him into being like the main dude now, because James Wan is, I don't want to say outgrown these kind of movies, but he has many other obligations now compared to when he started.
I'd say it's a lateral move at best.
Well, DC is probably not going to be doing much.
Yeah.
Really, so
Seriously.
maybe he'll come back. But yeah, so I really didn't like The Conjuring 3, which Chavez also took over for.
You know, I didn't even make it like to the halfway mark in that one. I was bored and stupid.
I thought it had a lot of issues, and I feel like really like if James Wan had done that one and like made that his 3 and he's out, that would have been like a good center line.
It felt like a cheap made-for-TV version of it or something.
Yeah.
It just...
So I was nervous about the Nun II because I was like, ugh.
See, I didn't watch all of the first one either. I bailed on that one.
I surprisingly liked the first one more than I think the impression is.
Yeah, I thought it was dull, man.
But this one, so same thing as I said about Megan. It's like not revolutionary. It's not going to change anything. If you like these movies, it's kind of just more of the same. I did feel like it was more competently put together than The Conjuring 3 as far as just like plot and pacing and direction of everything.
Well, that's something.
So maybe this team now is improving with this whole Conjuring stuff, and maybe Conjuring 4 I know is coming, so perhaps that one will swing us back up a little bit. But it just kind of continues on from where the first Nun left off. We learn that the demon has been inhabited into that other guy, and that he's kind of bouncing around now, spreading its influence. And the church ends up bringing back Sister Irene from the first film, Taissa Farmiglia.
I do like her a lot.
Love her. I think she's great as this character. And they sort of recruit her to track down the demon and try to finally exorcise it, since she has a history dealing with it once before. Very straightforward, nothing revolutionary, but it's fun. It's like, to me, it's like going to like a local like haunt or scare attraction. Like, if you go to like Universal Halloween Horror Nights, you're getting something crazy, and there's the spectacle of all the work they put in. But like, if you go to the local haunted farm, year to year, it's the same thing. There might be like one thing that wows you each time, right? But
right.
You're just going because you like the atmosphere, you like the experience. You're there with some friends, you have a fun time, and then like that's it, and you're good.
Right.
And that is this movie.
Okay.
I did like that it continued the through line of the first one, that there's still this whole thing about like holy relics of the church. In the first one they had, what was it? It was like a vial with some blood from Jesus, or so it was something very elaborate and weird. But
you're thinking of Demon Knight.
Oh,
much better movie.
Pretty sure that was the first time. I don't know. Well, it's not an original idea by any account. But in this one, we get again another like holy relic of the Catholic Church, connected to a saint, and the demon's kind of trying to gain control of that and corrupt it. And I think that's a cool angle for these kind of movies. So
sure.
Yeah, fun. It was all right.
Okay.
And that's me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
What you got?
I'm going to talk about 2 movies.
Cool.
And I don't know, they couldn't be more different. Although ostensibly they are both based on a work of fiction. I finally watched. Yeah, well.
But go ahead.
I finally watched Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Oh, okay.
Which, man, this should have been great. If this was made in the 80s, it would have been a home run. But the director's good. Andre Overdahl, he's good.
Okay, cool.
He's got Liam Cunningham in it. The cast is fine. The cast is really good. It's just, it's boring. It's by the numbers. It's rote. It has some good atmosphere. There's some good scenes at night with the ship and the creaking and all that good stuff. But it's just a slog. And like 2+ hours, it's way too long. I know that's a frequent complaint of mine, but it doesn't mean it's not true. The vampire design, I don't hate. But to me, it doesn't look like Dracula.
Right.
Because this is based on the chapter in Bram Stoker's novel.
Yeah, I was nervous about it from the start because I felt like it set a bad precedent of like, let's take one chapter from a book and make it a movie.
I think it's a cool idea, though, because we don't really know what happened. We just have the captain's log to go on and stuff. And that's interesting. It's kind of cool to see, this is what happened. But it was just so underwhelming. And the end sets it up for a sequel. Like
Why?
T-Ball's a sequel.
Why?
And it reminded me of like the Dark Universe stuff, Oh, the game is afoot. Like now the movie's going to start. It's very, very disappointing.
Well.
So if you have not seen Last Voyage of the Demeter and you thought it looked interesting, I mean, there's worse ways you could waste 2 hours, but it's extremely average.
What if they took a chapter of Frankenstein and it's like one of the ones where it's just Victor Frankenstein sitting in his study talking to people, and then they were like, "Let's make this a 2-hour like
but things actually happen on the Demeter. I mean, it's creepy, but maybe the creepiness is in not seeing it and not knowing what happened.
Yeah, I think that makes it ominous because the boat just shows up,
right,
and the whole crew's dead, and they're like, "Oh,"
or like even just the few scenes in Nosferatu on board the ship. He's lurking around and everything. It's great. Anyway, can't recommend it.
That being said,
the second movie, however, I can heartily recommend, for it is Dune Part 2.
Yes.
Which might be even better than the first part.
Ooh.
I'm not sure. It's definitely on par. It's just as good as the first one. So if you love the first part, you will love this. I recommend you need to go see it in the theater, like an IMAX or an IMAX-like screen if you can. Luckily, I saw it at a decent theater, and the sound was actually really good. The presentation was pretty decent, so I got lucky there.
Nice.
It's a pretty faithful adaptation of the book, except from some stuff at the end. But I like what they did.
I wanted to ask you a question, but then I realized it's like a spoiler.
Okay.
But it feels normal to me because the book is so old and I've read it, but...
Well, let's talk about it. Okay. There are little spoilers, so skip ahead a little bit if you don't want anything ruined.
Oh, yeah, jump ahead till you hear the music for the break. So, at the end, is he still, like, totally, like, dump on his chick to get with the princess for the good of, like, establishing...
Yes.
Okay.
And that's where they change it, because in the book, Chani sticks around. Mm-hmm. She's, like, fine with it. Like, Jessica kind of explains to her, hey, this is politics. Get over it. And this one, she gets pissed and rides off on a sandworm.
Oh, okay.
But... Which could be problematic because there are children in the future. But
right.
We'll see.
Depends on how far they're going to go.
And it doesn't make sense that they're Ireland's children, really. Mm-hmm. But
interesting. I was just curious if they would try to tweak that at all.
Yeah. But I don't hate it. It doesn't ruin the movie or anything. It's just a little different. But man, I think Austin Butler steals the movie. He's so good as Vader Alpha.
I've been seeing a lot of praise for that.
Yeah, it's a very nuanced and layered performance. It's really interesting.
So here's my other question. Do you think we're going to get Dune Messiah?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Denis Villeneuve will do that, and then he'll probably bow out. And they could probably do God Emperor. No, Children of Dune. They could adapt that. After that, there's no way they're going to follow the books. No fucking way. Because things get way too insane.
You don't want all the, like, clones of everyone and...
Oh, I do. I'm all for it, man. Show me God Emperor. I want to see that on the big screen. That would be impressive. But anyway, I heartily recommend Dune 2.
Killer. Yeah, I'm on my way toward it, so.
Okay, good.
You look
Spice must flow.
Okay, yeah, I was like, you look unconvinced. No, I've realized that Tiffany's more interested in the idea of it now, and I was like, well, I need to show you the first one. Mm-hmm. She's a Dune neophyte, so.
Okay, all right.
So I think we're going to watch the first one, get her caught up, then go see it.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Yeah, she definitely needs to see the first part. Well, let me know what she thinks.
Cool. Awesome. All right. That brings us to our movie.
Let's talk. All right, so welcome back. This is the Dune podcast. We're only talking about Dune now.
The spice must flow!
Lisa now Gabe.
I do love all the memes of that dude.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Being like completely stunned and enraptured.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
No, today we are talking about Flesh and Blood. From 1985, Paul Verhoeven, his first English language feature film.
Is there any other better title for a Verhoeven film than Flesh and Blood?
I think it pretty much just describes his filmography. Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Cool. So, you picked this. Where do you want to start? I guess
did.
The synopsis, perhaps?
Sure. Let's talk about the synopsis.
Okay.
Well, first of all, maybe we should talk about the genre.
Okay. Yeah, what genre is this?
Okay, I love this because Wikipedia has it as a romantic historical adventure film.
Okay. Well, IMDb says just adventure/drama.
Okay.
So we actually have several tags in the mix here.
And I think they all apply.
To different degrees.
But basically, Flesh and Blood is about this group of mercenaries that are duped by this lord after they take over his city.
And notably, to account for last time, this is sort of like, was it the 1500s?
It's 1501 to be exact, yeah.
So not mercenaries with guns.
No, not mercenaries with guns. Mercenaries with two-handed fucking great swords and shit.
Raiding castles and stuff.
So then they kind of get their revenge by abducting the bride-to-be of his son, and a chase ensues, and dramatic interpersonal relationships are explored, and power balances and shifts, and things happen. There's flesh and blood, all right?
There's flesh and there's blood. What more do you want in this film? Yeah, that sounds pretty good to me.
All right. One of the first things you'll notice about this movie when you start watching it, and you can hear it, that it's by the score is by Basil Poledouris.
Oh, and where will people know that name?
Oh, they will know that from Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer.
Yes, of course.
And some other Verhoeven films like Robocop and Starship Troopers.
Yep.
He also, and I didn't know this, but he also did the music for John Waters' Serial Mom and Cecil B. Demented.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that bizarre?
That's a cool resume to have.
Yeah, seriously.
Wow.
Yeah, great composer. Like if you don't, listen to the Conan soundtrack regularly, like if you're a fantasy fan or something.
That's definitely a pull when I need like gaming music for tabletops and stuff.
Oh, absolutely, man. Oh, it was also seeing the credits shot by Jan de Bont, who would go on to direct Speed and some other crappier movies.
I can see Speed. I can see the connection here.
Yeah, I mean he's a great DP, but I don't really care that much for most of his movies.
I wanted to give some early setup stuff because there's actually a lot of like background on this film, unlike some of the ones we have been doing recently.
Okay.
So the script is based on unused material from a Dutch TV series from '69 called Floris, and that was worked on by Verhoeven. Also, the screenwriter for this, Gerard Soteman. Yeah, Soteman. Make sure I said that right. My bad. And Rutger Hauer, he was also in it. They all kind of worked on this. And in a very Verhoeven-esque way, it ended up getting canceled because they kept going over budget.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. That tracks.
This was like a scrap of an idea they had, and they kind of reimagined it into this film.
Nice.
It had some different names. The original title was God's Own Butchers, which I think is a badass name, but I don't know if it would have done as well.
Yeah, well, this didn't do too well anyway, so it couldn't have hurt.
We'll get into that for sure.
Yeah.
And then early VHS releases is called it The Rose and the Sword, which is a very lame name.
Yeah, that doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah. So again, like you said, it's 1501. We're in Italy.
Yep.
We open onto a battle.
Yeah, right there.
We're
Right,
just sweeping
fucking getting into it,
in
man.
front of a castle. People are dying.
Uh-huh.
And they really drill home the setting because it looks medieval, and it is technically still right.
Right.
It's starting to modernize.
We're getting into the whole like late medieval period.
Yeah.
So Renaissance is coming up and all.
But so we start to see things that are like there's lots of different siege weapons that are a little more advanced than what you would expect.
We got cannon and everything.
Yeah,
like
there's
that.
gunpowder involved. There's cannons. So it's an interesting like time to set a film, I think, because usually it's very decidedly medieval, or
one or the other.
It cuts a interesting line. But yeah, we meet the ruler of this castle town. It's Arnolfini. And he is played by Fernando Hilbeck.
Does a good job. Yep. A right pricky bastard.
Looks like a king.
Yeah. So apparently this city was taken from him. There was like a coup d'etat or something.
Yep.
So he's trying to take it back.
And because he needed the men to do it, he has hired this mercenary company led by a man named Hawkwood, played by Jack Thompson. And Hawkwood's just like kind of your career mercenary. He's been a warrior all his life. He's put together this company of trusted men, and they've kind of just roamed the lands and worked for whoever has the money. And just living life, man. Being badasses.
Yep. And, that's something that people don't really think about a lot, but that was such a common practice back then. There were bands of mercenaries you would hire to go do the dirty work and shit.
And when you need the numbers, that's like, hey.
Yeah. But you touched on something interesting, I think, is part of the movie, and that is the fact that it's in this weird kind of in-between time.
Right. The world's starting to modernize some into like what would be the Renaissance era, but it's not quite there yet.
Right. And I think that's also exemplified by Hawkwood, because you see him, he's in like full plate armor.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the other people, they've kind of eschewed armor because it doesn't really do anything anymore. When you've got, guns being fired at you.
Later we do see some muskets in the film. So,
right.
I mean, plate armor is not going to stop that.
That's typically going to go through plate, yeah.
You may as well be fast and limber and able to kind of dodge around and stuff.
Right.
And also we see this a lot with, we'll get to him when he shows up, but Arnolfini's son, Stephen, played by Tom Burlinson. He is sort of a scholar and is very into studying science.
Yeah, he's a visionary.
A very, very visionary
innovator. A thinker. He's at university right now. So Arnolfini says, hey, take this city from me and you can loot it for 24 hours.
Yep. Walk out of here with anything you can take.
And they're all like, yeah. And it's funny because we meet them taking communion from their priest.
Yeah.
They call it the cardinal.
The mercenary company has their own personal priest.
Yeah, which I love.
And he makes it a point. He's like, well, you have to do this, or if you go in there and you die, you're not going to go to heaven. So,
Man, talk about murder hobos. These are the original murder hobos, and this is their cleric.
And as they're doing that, we also get some vibe of like their group also has like some women that follow them around.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of just, well, you know,
Women of pleasure.
Women of pleasure, prostitutes.
One of them is quite pregnant.
Yes. At first, I thought it was going to be a joke, and she would have like a barrel of wine or something in there, but
no,
yeah,
no.
And yeah, they kind of just like prop up tents wherever the group goes and just hang out and enjoy the spoils of battle.
Yeah. And we quickly meet Martin, who's played by Rutger Hauer.
Our lead.
Who you will know from many a movie. Before this, he had done probably Roy Batty was his most famous character.
That's who I always think of first for him.
Yeah. Interesting though, this year he had another medieval movie come out.
Oh,
Lady Hawk by Richard Donner.
Yeah, I love Lady Hawk. Yeah.
There's parts I really like. Like if you could take Matthew Broderick out of the movie, I think it's much better.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, he sticks out like a sore thumb, man. So Martin comes in and he's not their leader, but he's definitely the most charismatic one.
He's the front man.
Yeah.
If this were a band.
Yeah. Right.
Hawk would put it together, but he's like in the back on the keyboard or something, and Martin's front and center.
Yeah. And he's got this huge, great two-handed greatsword.
Claymore, right? I think.
Not technically a claymore, no. Just I think it's just like a two-handed greatsword.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's like taking communion, and he keeps taking all the wafers.
Just shoves them all in his mouth.
Yeah. But it looks like he's the father. Like he's with the woman who's pregnant. Her name is Celine.
Yeah, they mentioned that in passing.
Yeah. And they got a little kid's part of their mercenary. Mm-hmm. He's their drummer. And his mother's there. And she's like making sure he eats before he goes drumming off into battle. Yeah, and this is where we meet Arnolfini's son, Stephen.
Which Celine, she's played by Susan Tyrrell.
Okay, yeah.
Put in there.
Yeah. And Stephen's played by a dude who I don't think I've seen in anything else.
Tom Burlinson?
Yeah. He did not seem familiar to me. But we meet him, and he's got this great idea. He comes in rolling in what he's calling a mobile bomb.
Yeah.
And it is a good idea. It's like a barrel, basically, filled with gunpowder, and it's got like a fork on it, like a wheelbarrow you could push it around on. It's got a fuse. And he was trying to show it to his dad and stuff, and Hawkwood's like, hey, this has got potential. This could work. And they're calling for a volunteer to try it, right? Because Steven's like, well, you got to roll up to the gate. I light this fuse. It'll blow up the gate. So one of the mercenaries is like, they throw a gold coin. He takes it. He's like, I'll do it. He runs up with it. They light the fuse. He's running up there, but the fuse burns too fast. Blows him the fuck up before he even gets to the gate. And then all the mercenaries laugh. That's the best part. Everyone just fucking laughs.
Yeah.
And of course, Steven's wearing a doublet and stuff.
Yeah.
He's not dressed for battle. He doesn't have a weapon. He's just there.
He's not a warrior. He's a thinker.
He's a scholar. Yeah. But he does want to join the battle. But his father says that fighting is for fools.
Yep.
And makes him stay.
Just let the mercenaries take the city. Yeah. I've already paid them.
That's what they're paying these jackasses for. Let someone else do the fighting for you. Which is a commentary on, governments and
definitely
authority figures, if ever there was one. Oh, we're going to start the war. We're not going to fucking fight it.
Still true today.
Yep. Let's see. So we get some fun combat.
Oh yeah, they breach in, which is cool.
Yeah, I love how they're going in and they're fighting people and killing them or wounding them, and then the cardinal, the priest, comes by and he's like stabbing all the survivors.
Well, you gotta send them on, man. Come on.
Yeah.
He's confirming every kill.
And there's a great scene with the man catcher, the one soldier using the man catcher that goes around Hawkwood's throat.
Yeah,
a real weapon.
Very
that
cool
was
weapon
used.
too.
Yeah.
And we get some cool scenes of the rest of the crew of their little mercenary company, like the core people. Mm-hmm. And I like how they each have kind of their own defining thing. Like one dude's got a big axe that he's swinging.
Yeah.
There's one dude who has double daggers and he just like stabs people a bunch of times.
Yep.
I kind of like that. Yeah, they each have their own fighting style. Uh-huh. And it's really awesome to see Martin with that great sword and the way he actually fights with it and stuff.
Yeah.
Even sometimes like he has to like kind of brace it with both hands,
Right,
and
which
like
is why
turn with it.
but that's what you would do, especially in close quarters like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great.
Really cool. And it's just total chaos as they're tearing through there.
Total chaos. And one of their men is shot by a gun from a window above. So Hawkwood's like, well, I'm going to go up there and kill that fucker. So he runs up there, and there's the person who shot the guns behind the drapery by the window.
They're trying to hide.
And he just goes off and swings. But turns out it was a nun back there.
Yeah.
And she's got this huge gash in her head.
She just collapses immediately to the floor.
Yeah.
And Hawkwood's taken aback by this.
Yeah.
He would have never harmed her had he known.
Right. Right. And he calls for a surgeon to come up there. And the dude's looking at her. He's like, oh, she's fucked,
Yeah.
But he's like, you got to save her. Please save her. And then we hear the bells ringing, signaling that the city's surrendering.
And that means it's time to loot.
Time to loot.
Which, again, these are mercenaries. They're not under any compulsions to do this for the good of the world, so...
Nope.
They just start taking anything that's not nailed down, including the women, as it would be.
Yep. Some of them just start going at it right there in the streets.
Yep. And Steven's kind of disgusted by this. And I think even Arnolfini is taken aback a little, just because maybe he didn't expect how far it would go.
I think he always planned on duping them, because he comes up to Hawkwood, and he's like bitching about the mercenaries are going to take everything in the city. So he's like, no, I'm gonna throw them out. They can't do this. And Hawkwood, he's got some honor. Mm-hmm. He's upset that he hurt this nun. He's pissed at Arnolfini because he's reneged on his word. But Arnolfini pressures him. He says, hey, if you don't do this, I'm not going to help you take care of this nun. She's going to die.
Yep. But if you help me, I'll ensure that she lives.
Yep.
And again, Hawkwood is an older guy.
Yeah.
He's getting up there in years. He knows he doesn't have much long he can do this.
He's beating the odds as it is.
Yeah.
We get a great conversation between Martin and Steven at this point, too.
Yeah. They have a little chat in the aftermath.
Yeah, Martin comes up to him. He's got like his arms around him and asking, like, he said he hasn't seen Steven in a while. He's been away at university. Meanwhile, Martin has fought like 16 campaigns, he says.
Yeah, because he says stuff about like, what did you learn and stuff like that. And he's like, well, I don't need to learn. I've learned from battle.
Right.
And it sets up immediately this dichotomy between the two of them. The one that's sort of like the experience of the world, and the one that's like kind of the hope of knowledge.
Yeah, the one who's down in the dirt, and the other one who kind of has his head in the clouds.
Yeah.
Oh, Brian James is one of the mercenaries.
Oh, yes,
he plays Cars. And you will know him. He was also in Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Played Leon. He was in the horror show with Lance Henriksen. Bunch of shit.
He's got that face that you just see it and you're like, oh, that guy.
He's in the Sam Raimi's underrated Crime Wave. Mm-hmm. He's pretty fun in that. Lots of shit. But we found out that Martin is the father of Celine's child, or at least she says he is. But, Cars is like, I could be too, I'd be a good dad. And this is also where we kind of meet briefly two mercenaries who are gay.
Yeah, and they make it very overt too. They don't try to step around it, because they're talking about getting all the women, and they kind of crack a joke about it.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, we're not. Yeah, it's like they know they're not the father.
Yeah.
It's Bruno Kirby playing Orbic, and Simon Andrew is Meal.
Yeah.
And I really like the way they're played and portrayed in this movie, because they are never ever mocked. Mm-hmm. They're not made fun of. They're not insulted. It's like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's
irrelevant to how they work as a mercenary company.
Right. It's very matter of fact, and it's just there. Mm-hmm. And to be made in the 80s, that's saying something.
And surprisingly, we'll see it as this goes forward, but they're like two of the most loyal in the whole group.
Yeah.
So ultimately, Hawkwood accepts Arnolfini's offer.
Yeah.
They start this whole thing of trying to lead the mercenary company into this like open area so they can celebrate and party.
Yeah, let's go to the square. We're going to party.
But they actually corral them kind of into a dead end. Yeah. And then they surround them with cannons. And Hawkwood basically says, hey, it's over. Arnolfini's reneged.
Not only can they not keep the loot, but they have to give up all their weapons.
Yep. Hand over all your weapons and get out of here. Never return. And you can tell that there's a good history between Hawkwood and Martin. Like, they've clearly been through a lot of these battles together.
I think he was joking at first.
Yeah. He thinks it's just they're playing with him or something. And there's a real hurt in Martin, I think, when he realizes, like, oh, no, this is like...
Yeah.
And Hawkwood even tries to justify because he says, I'm old, Martin. I can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
I have to get out at some point.
Yeah. I don't know if he hands him a big sack of money right there in front of everybody, too. And Stephen, his son, says that's a rotten trick to his father. And Arnolfini says that he can have a country house where his nun can rest.
Yep. And they can retire to a farming life.
Yep. Meanwhile, sometime later, because when they're actually being forced to leave the city, we see Celine kind of like having like pregnancy pains or something. Yep. So then she's giving birth in some ruins, and it's raining on them, and it's all mucky and horrible. And the baby is stillborn.
Yeah, unfortunately. And so they're kind of licking their wounds at this point. They prepare the infant for burial.
And you could tell that it upsets Martin. I mean, he's not an emotionless bastard.
Oh yeah. And she's very worried that she doesn't want him to just be like thrown in the dirt.
Yeah.
So they prepare like a little container to put
they put him like in this little cask.
And they dig out a spot to bury him. But as they're digging that out, they find more of the ruins, and they actually find a statue.
Yes. Of a saint with a sword.
Yeah, Saint Martin of Tours.
And Martin says, hey, that's my patron saint. I was named after him.
And the cardinal sees this as a sign. Clearly a sign from God.
Yep. He has a vision saying that they're going to become rich, and Martin will lead them to fortune.
Yep. So everyone kind of rallies around Martin, elevates him to their new leader.
Well, not one guy.
Oh, yeah. The one guy is very opposed.
There's one dissenter, and the cardinal, because he had smuggled a sword out underneath his robes from the city, just runs this guy through.
Yeah, everyone's like, whoa, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah, and he's like, hey, no one's going to go against us, the word of God. Martin's our leader, and that's the way it is.
So they do dig up the statue, and it joins them for the rest of their journey.
Yes.
It kind of becomes very useful later, but they bury the child, and they're going to just travel, and Martin's already thinking, like, I'm going to get back at them somehow for this and everything they've done. Just got to wait for the right opportunity.
Well, sure. Then we see Stephen tinkering with some wooden models and machines in this big workshop.
And we get a little bit of a time error here. Because he's talking about some stuff that Da Vinci's wrote.
Right.
And I think it's actually a few years before that was ever made, so...
Well, I mean, it takes time for news to travel, right?
I mean, but if we're in 1501. I think I looked it up. It was like 1505 or 1506.
Oh, so the movie is set before that happens.
But it's so minor.
It's fine. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Don't be pedantic.
I'm always amused to look up goofs, though.
True. So Arnolfini comes in, and he shows him this locket with this little miniature painting in there of this girl. He's like, hey, check out this hot chick. Her name's Agnes, and she's gonna be your wife.
Yep, surprise. And Steven's immediately against it because he's like, I don't even want to fool with having a wife. I've got my studies. I have all these plans I want to look into.
Yeah, it's like, if I have a wife, I can't pursue my studies. What do I need a woman for? And his dad's like, well, she was raised as a convert, so she's gonna be a virgin. Like that's all that matters. But they decide to go falconing. They're going to go hunting.
I thought it was funny because he's like, we're going falcon. He's like, oh, I love falcons.
Yeah. That's what he starts to want Da Vinci. Da Vinci based his drawings off the wings of...
I was like, oh, man, you poor person.
Sweet summer child.
Yeah. But clearly this is Arnolfini. He's got to set up the family line to keep everything going.
Yeah,
so of course, Stephen needs a wife to bear a child. All that good stuff.
And then we meet Agnes.
Played by Jennifer Jason Leigh.
The great, underrated Jennifer Jason Leigh, I would say. I mean, really, think about her filmography. She's very solid. She's...
That's fair.
And she never had a problem, like, with nudity. She was always a very brave actress, I think. And she actually defends this movie, too, because a lot of people got upset by the sexual violence.
Yeah, there's some cuts on this in some versions.
Right.
We'll talk about later.
And Jennifer Jason Leigh was like... It shouldn't have been cut. She's like, I know these scenes are hard to watch, but they're there for a reason.
And that would have been the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
right. So, if the actress who's performing it is okay with it, I understand if people don't want to watch it, if that's the sort of thing that triggers them. I get that completely. But from an artistic point of view,
Yeah.
Now, if she wasn't okay with it, then yeah, that wouldn't be okay.
She wasn't the first pick, though. There were some early considerations. I think she was the first pick for Verhoeven himself, but it was one of those things where the studio, wanted to try some people.
Yeah.
They also considered Natasha Kinski and Rebecca De Mornay.
Okay, I could see either one of those.
De Mornay, I guess they liked a lot, but she was ultimately rejected because she demanded that her boyfriend of the time, Tom Cruise, should be cast as Steven.
Ooh.
That nixed her because they already had their Steven,
I guess, yeah, that's probably after Risky Business, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so then Verhoeven kind of just got to go with what he wanted, and he wanted Jennifer Jason Leigh. He said that ever since he had seen her in Fast Times at Ridgemont High,
another brave performance.
When they were thinking about the character of Agnes, he was like, she would be perfect for this.
Mm-hmm. Good casting.
Yeah.
Verhoeven's always had a good knack at that.
I cannot imagine Tom Cruise as Steven.
No.
God, this film would go down.
It would be like Legend.
Yeah.
I mean, that movie, he sinks that movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, there's other problems with that movie, but he's the biggest. Also, this might be a good time to mention that original script didn't even have the love angle in it.
Yeah, this is like the biggest change on this film. The original pitch from Verhoeven and them was that it was going to be all about Hawkwood and Martin and kind of their relationship and how after this betrayal there's this rivalry between them, and they kind of both just descend into the depths as they try to finish things with each other.
Right. But the studio, like Orion backed it, they're like, no, we need a love story. You got to write a love story in there. And it completely changes the tone of the movie.
Mm-hmm. For the bad, I think. I'm gonna
be
honest.
All right, well, we'll get into that.
The more I watched it, and we will talk about it, but I kept thinking about that original pitch, and I was like, man, that's like the perfected version of this.
Okay, we'll see. So yeah, Agnes, she's looking at a similar locket to what Steven has. It's got his picture in it. And Agnes is having a conversation with her lady in waiting.
Yes.
Kathleen, played by Bart Simpson.
It's very noticeable, too.
Yep, it's Nancy Cartwright. And she's like, what do you do with a man alone? She was raised in the comment. She doesn't know what the fuck's going on here. And she commands her, they're like picnicking later.
Yeah.
Agnes commands Kathleen to show her what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, right now? I was like, yeah, right now.
There's even this funnier scene where she runs off with one of the knights that's like protecting their caravan, and she's gonna like hook up with them, and then Agnes just like interrupts and like knocks her off him.
Yeah, like she watches for a while, and she's getting the gist of what's happening and hearing some of the dialogue. Mm-hmm. And then she gets. It's weird. It's a layered performance because you don't know if she's mad that Kathleen is doing this and enjoying it, or if she's like offended by it or grossed out. You're not sure, but she like starts whipping his ass to get him off of her.
It was abusing. And then they kind of just stumble into Steven and his crew.
Yep. Arnolfini and Steven, they're out there hunting, doing their falconry stuff. And he's like, oh, how convenient. Here's your bride-to-be. And Steven figures it out. It's like, okay, this was a setup. You knew she was going to be out here.
Yeah.
Fuck you. And he rides off and pouts.
Yeah, but she follows because she wants to actually talk to Steven, figure out who he is.
Yep. So she takes a horse and rides off after him. And they go off and have a nice little conversation together.
Yeah, they have what you call a meet cute, as one might say.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, this is where Steven says that, a wife will only distract him from being a scientist and a scholar. But this is a really weird scene. I love it.
This is very telling of Agnes, I think.
Yeah, they come to this huge tree and there's bodies hanging from it.
Uh-huh.
Thieves or maybe some of the mercenaries. I don't know.
Like you do in the time.
And they are rotting. The crows have taken all the tinder bits, and they're just swinging here. And it's almost like Steven and Agnes both just sort of ignore it, like it just doesn't matter, which could be like interpreted as like the brutality of the time. You get used to it. It's not. People are executed all the time.
I mean, it was common to hang thieves like that as like a warning,
right?
Of course, so. Not their first rodeo with this.
No. So Agnes starts digging around to find the mandrake root.
Yeah, and she tells Steven she read about this, and it's supposed to be kind of the blood of the people that have been killed and hung there have like nursed it and empowered it.
Yeah.
And if two people eat the root, they'll magically fall in love and be together forever.
So they do.
Steven's reluctant at first, though. He thinks it's all silly and gibberish. But she's being very coy, very playful.
Very persuasive.
And he's like, I'll go along with it.
I'd do it.
Why not?
So interesting, the side effects of eating mandrake would be nausea, dilated pupils, blurred vision, and tachycardia.
Oh.
Which, all that pretty much sounds like love to me. So, you know.
Okay. Interesting. So there's some real truth behind that.
Yeah.
Cool.
They would get a feeling from doing this.
They would feel a way. All right. I'm cool with that. So they're just having a good time. The caravan's kind of moving on now. They're all going to make their way back to the castle, wherein they will continue their conversations. And as they kind of crest a hill, they see a group of monks just walking in the road.
Yep.
Saying their prayers and
hitting their heads with books.
Yeah. And as they get closer, the monks move to the side of the road to get out of the way of the caravan, as you would do. And they kind of hold out, some plates and cups and stuff.
Asking for alms.
Yep. Please, some alms. And they're throwing them coins. And Agnes kind of checks with Steven to be like, what's going on? What's up there? And then she wants to give them something, too, as a donation. But they're not monks, are they?
No, they're the mercenaries in disguise.
And
the oldest trick in the book.
Yeah, classic. And since the last time we've seen them, they have geared back up again.
Yeah, they got some weapons. So a fight breaks out. Celine stabs Arnolfini with a spear.
Yeah.
Kathleen tries to strangle one of the mercs, but is stabbed by him. So the fight, chaos, and then the mercenaries are taking off with the wagons. But unbeknownst to them, Agnes is hiding in the back of one of them.
Yep. And so she is unknowingly kidnapped.
Yep. And Steven's like, hey, it's my bride I love now. Bring her back.
Also, can I just say, it really seems like Arnolfini would die from this, but surprisingly, he hangs on.
He's a tough bastard. Yeah. He's a fucker. I mean, the nun got hit right in the head. She's still alive because we meet her in the next scene.
We do, yes.
Yeah, Steven goes riding to Hawkwood. He's tending a garden with the nun.
Peaceful little life.
It was like kind of unnervingly hot. Is that just me? I mean, did you...
Yeah.
She's pretty attractive.
Yeah, she was.
I mean,
I get why Hawkwood was like, you know what? Fuck my friends. Fuck my life. I'm giving up everything.
This nun's hot.
this nun is hot.
But she seems to be recovering pretty good, Arnolfini's not dead. He's kind of like braced up in this wooden cage contraption.
He's like the 1501 version of Robocop.
Yeah, right. And Steven's like, hey, help us go after Martin and them. They took my bride. We gotta go fuck them up.
And Hawkwood declines at first. He's like, no, I'm done with that. I've said goodbye to that life. I'm a farmer now.
Yeah.
We gotta plant the seeds.
And Steven gets pissed off. He's like, fuck your crops, and starts kicking them. And Clara, the nun, sees this and freaks out.
Yeah, it seems like the violence triggers her memories of the attack on the castle.
Yeah. So she starts convulsing and shit again. And Hawkwood's like, damn it, motherfucker. And then Arnolfini's like, hey, you're going to help us or we're going to commit this nun to the insane asylum. She's obviously crazy and dangerous. So again, they're forcing Hawkwood.
Despite his protests otherwise, he realizes he has to do it.
Yep. So that night, we see the mercenaries are reveling. They got the wagons gathered around. They're going through all the shit, the loot, and eating and drinking. They say they're only going to wear red from now on, and they're all getting out red clothing.
Yeah, there's some boxes of like nobleman clothing and dresses and stuff, and Martin proclaims that they're only going to wear red now, and that's their look and their sign.
He's wearing this nice red doublet.
Very cool looking.
He's digging around and finds Agnes, and she's like, "Hey, don't say anything. Shh, be quiet. Be cool."
Unfortunately, the cardinal also noticed.
And he says. Yeah, he notices just after they talk about how they share everything.
Because that was the rule that Martin had stated.
Yep.
Was that, like, from now on, it's even between everyone.
Yep, everything's equal. It's, communism at its worst. They're a bunch of Marxists now.
They are wearing red, aren't they?
Yeah.
This is a layered film, perhaps.
So they begin to taunt her, and of course, some sexual violence ensues.
Yeah, all the men are like, "Oh, let's take turns raping her."
Yeah, Martin is obviously conflicted. One of the guys has her down on the ground, but she's fighting back. This guy's named Summer.
Yep,
this one mercenary,
played by John Dennis Johnston, and man, what a sleazeball!
He's pretty sleazy. Yeah, he's pretty.
He's even got the
sleazy.
weird he's kind of bald but not really bald thing going on.
Hey, well, that could be me.
You have such a jovial face, this dude.
Right. But she's like fighting back. She grabs a piece of firewood and burns his ass with it.
Yeah.
But then Martin has them hold her while he has his way with her.
Yep.
But she's turns the tables on him a little bit.
Yeah, she pulls a little from the pages of some of the Pink films we've been watching.
She does.
Yeah.
And she imitates what Kathleen was doing.
Yeah.
She starts saying, "Oh, my brave soldier," shit like that, and they're all laughing.
And she's like, "No, I like it."
Yeah. And all the mercs are laughing. And they're like, "Oh, who's raping who here?" Now I love the look on Rutger Hauer's face too. He's so conflicted.
Yeah.
And once he's done, she's kind of like, just you. Don't let anybody else.
Yeah, please.
So, but they got to share everything.
And he's a clever bastard, man. So
Yep.
he acts like, no. Whoever wants next, take their turn. But then he connives a way to get everyone to stop.
Yeah, he kicks a piece of that firewood or at the wagons, creates a big fire, distracts everybody.
And isn't this where, due to the fire, the statue turns?
Well, the statue's on fire, and the colonel's kind of freaking out about this. And then, because it's burning, it sort of shifts in the wagon. And Martin says that it's pointing to our next destination.
Yep,
and we got to go.
Saint.
We have to go now.
Cleverly preventing anyone else from taking advantage of her.
Yes. So in their pursuit, we see Hawkwood now with Stephen and his company. They come across a plague victim being buried. Mm-hmm. Stephen says it's useless to hold your breath against it because everyone's like covering their mouths and stuff. Yep. But they notice one of the girls wearing one of Agnes's dresses.
Yep, the red.
Yeah. Stephen wants to know where she got it. The mother says she got it at some campsite, but she can't say anything more because the girl's had her tongue torn out.
Yep. Which they even kind of accused them because it was some soldiers, right, that took advantage of her.
Right. Again, just more of the wanton, horrible, random violence
Badness,
in this world.
whichever direction you go in.
Seriously. So they're on the right trail. They're on the track. So the mercenaries are driving around the next day in their little caravan. Summer is attempting to assault Agnes again. Martin don't like this. And this is when he kind of kicks the statue.
Yeah.
And it starts pointing toward this castle yonder.
Yeah. They just happen to be passing by.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it says, "Hey, that's our castle. We're going to go take it. That's where it's telling us to go." So that night, they infiltrate the castle. It is Martin, and he takes Agnes with him because he's like, "Hey, you're a lady. You know what castles look like inside. You're coming with me.
I need directions."
Mm-hmm.
And they go in through the chimney.
Yeah, they climb up and then go through the chimney, which is pretty smart. And they're coming down. They notice there's a fire going. There's food cooking. There's people down there inside.
I love when he first peeks into the room and you get the look of what it is. And it's like there's a young girl on a bed and she's like moaning in pain because she's sick.
Mm-hmm.
And there's attendants to her, but then also there's a big table of food.
Right.
And everyone's just kind of like bumbling around trying to take care of her.
Mm-hmm. And one of the servants notices them hiding up there. And they jump down and the flames spark everywhere and there's chaos. And they keep saying, "Oh, devils in the chimney." Because he's wearing red,
But he blitzes out of there because they've already got their plan. And he makes pretty much right for the gate.
Yeah. And doesn't Agnes seem to be enjoying herself a lot during this part?
She does, yeah. She's all into this.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't have this been a good time for her to be like, "I'm in a castle. There's a bunch of guards here.
Guards, please save me.
There's a noble family.
Yeah.
I'm so-and-so of such and such house. This man has abducted me. Kill him."
Mm-hmm.
Because once the guards are alerted, it's not like the mercenaries are going to be able to get into this castle.
Right.
But no, she's having fun. And I got a theory. I think it's mostly because this is like her first taste of like freedom.
Yeah.
To a degree. Yeah. She's not being forced to marry someone she doesn't even know. Mm-hmm. Not being raised in a boring convent. She's excited.
One may say.
So they get the drawbridge open. All the mercs come in, start killing the guards.
And you can tell these are the guards for this castle. You can tell they've not fought very much.
Dude, they're like level 0.
Yeah. They've kind of just had this nice, peaceful little out-of-the-way castle with no trouble, no strife.
They are minions at best.
Yeah, and they handily destroy them.
But Agnes sees like the lady of the castle taking that sick girl up the battlements.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, we're not going to hurt you. She actually yells this at the lady when they're slaughtering all the guards and all their people. But the woman jumps with her kid, falls to the ground. The child's still alive, however.
She starts crawling away.
Yep. They keep the servants alive.
They do. I think it's funny because the one woman they're threatening to kill or rape, and then Martin's kind of like, "Oh, can you cook?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, get in the kitchen and cook us something then."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so they're getting ready to eat and all this stuff, and Agnes is kind of working her wiles on Martin.
Yeah.
She's learning how to control him with her sexuality, which is pretty much all women had back then.
Right. Yeah.
And some might argue even today that's all some of them have as an advantage because of the way society is structured.
That audio. Whew.
Hey, you telling me I'm wrong? That in some societies that's the only advantage that they have, the only thing they have to work with. I mean,
and immediately we start to see some tensions boil because Celine can tell there's eyes moving between Agnes and Martin.
Yeah. And Agnes says, "I'm one of you now, and I'll help get this castle."
Yeah, she just wants to be one of the crew now.
Yeah. So they're partying and eating like a bunch of skeeksies.
Yeah, they're just like tearing into everything.
And Agnes is daintily eating with her knife and fork.
Mm-hmm. Properly,
like a lady. And Martin sees this, and he's like, okay, I can do this. He's not too good at it.
And it's funny because everyone else makes fun of him, and it sort of embarrasses him out of trying more.
Yeah.
And then Agnes is like, no, I'm going to make him do it.
Yeah.
And how do you make someone do something when you're at a table?
Playing footsie with their crotch.
Obviously.
That's what I do.
Oh, shame this table's so big then. Huh? Okay.
It's hard to reach under there. So yeah, she encourages him to keep going. And there's this great scene where he's like, from now on, we're going to eat like lords and ladies. We're going to use knives and forks. And everyone's like, yes, cutlery, yes. This is how we eat.
Yeah, he kind of flips everyone to be into it.
Uh-huh. And again, Summer's trying to get with Agnes.
Yeah.
But Martin starts kind of wrestling with him, and the Cardinal and Cars come and help. And the Cardinal's like, we have Martin to thank for this, so he gets the girl. You know, back off.
And he's going to be the king, so obviously he needs a queen.
Right. So then they have this hot, fun bath time together.
Yeah, the servants draw him a bath.
We do see Agnes with the locket again, and she kind of kisses it before she like puts it up, hiding it.
Yeah, and this is where it starts to be one of my problems with this film is like, I get that she's young, but she's like all over the place in this, like her motivation and her direction.
But how much of it is genuine? A lot of it is just her trying to stay alive.
Sure,
because this is all she's got. She has to manipulate these people, and Martin, and the only way she can do that is through sex.
I guess my other problem is that Steven is just so lame.
Steven is lame.
Yeah.
He is lame.
So I was like, why is she still pining for this
But
dude?
he is at least, I mean, he's genuine, I think. And I never question his genuine motives. Like, I think he's like one of the few good characters in the movie. Is he like, and I mean good, like, point of view.
Yeah, except for the part where he kind of is a partner to dicking over Hawkwood.
Right.
To get him back
in
the game.
Yeah, I mean, he's not, yeah. We see that he has the same sort of
Even for his criticisms of his father, he immediately falls back on that.
right when it's something that he really wants. Yeah, absolutely. There's no saints in this movie, except for Saint Martin, the statue.
But the dynamic is interesting here because it kind of shifts a little bit. Because up to this point, Martin's been completely in control. And so he's kind of like by the bath, ready to get in. He's watching her undress.
Yeah.
And she's like, hey, I want to undress without you watching me.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, he relents and goes along with it.
Right. Then she gets in the tub and everything. And she's clearly dominating him sexually at this point.
They're having more of like a tender romantic moment than just like lust of any way.
Right. So in their pursuit, Stephen and his men come across the little girl from the castle.
Yep, she's just crawling for her life.
Poor girl. And she dies immediately after telling them that devils came down the chimney and killed everyone. We see Hawkwood's kind of like cradling her, like touching her. And then he touches his face. And noticeably there's kind of like a black smear.
Yeah, he gives her like a hug kind of almost.
Yeah. Father George is burying her later and finds that the girl has the plague.
Yep.
This big, horrible...
The old bubonic plague.
Yeah. So it's probably a bad thing that Hawkwood was just touching his face. COVID rules, people. Come on. So the next day, we see the mercenaries. They're like feasting on the battlements.
Yep.
Having a nice outside breakfast.
And Martin emerges decked out in white.
Yep, they're both wearing white. And they're like, hey, we're supposed to be wearing red now. What the fuck? They start singing a song, making merry when they spot horsemen approaching. And it's Stephen and his company.
I like how they all kind of just crouch behind the battlements.
Yeah, they just hide. Yeah, like, shh, maybe they'll go away. Oh no, Mormons, hide.
And they realize it's Stephen and his group. And Martin just tells them, like, hey, Agnes, stand up, go greet him.
And we see Hawkwood's kind of like not looking so good.
Yeah, he's stumbling a little.
Kind of swaying on his saddle and shit. So Agnes is like, go away. I'm happy here. I'm with them now. And Stephen's like, oh, they're making her say this. You know, they're threatening her life. But then Hawkwood falls off his horse. And Stephen's trying to barter. He's saying, hey, give us the girl. You can keep the spoils. We don't give a shit. I just want the girl.
We don't care about the spoils or that castle that has nothing to do with us.
Yeah. But of course, why are they going to believe him?
Right.
He's Arnolfini's son, you know?
They've already been betrayed once.
Right. So they start throwing shit at him. You know, fruit, vegetables, and stuff. And Agnes puts the locket into like, I think it's an orange.
Yeah, and she hurls it right at Stephen.
Yeah, good shot too, because he hits him and he picks it up and it's got the locket. So he's like, "Oh, okay, you know, I was right. You know, she wants me to come rescue her."
But there's no way they're going to siege the castle in this condition.
Nope.
Especially with Hawkwood indisposed.
Yeah, they find out he's got bubonic plague. The surgeon starts to bleed him.
So I fucking love this. They retreat to make a camp.
Yeah.
And then they're taking stock. And Stephen comes into the tent and he's like, oh, he's got the plague. I'm going to have to bleed him a little bit.
Yep. But Stephen's like, no, you have to lance it.
Yeah.
The Arab doctors say you have to lance the boils.
And the doctor's like, well, that's not of God, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, it's like, fuck those heathens. No.
He's like, I won't do any heathen practices on Hawkwood. I got to do it all by the book. And that means we got to bleed him.
So Stephen goes out and starts supervising some sort of construction that's happening.
Yeah, he's crafting a plan.
Mm-hmm. We see Father George come out and he dumps blood from the captain on the ground. This dog comes by and starts lapping it.
Yep.
And Stephen's like, hey, get the fuck out of here. It's poison blood. Get the fuck out. So later that night, Agnes is watching whatever they're doing. They got like torchlight, and they're obviously constructing something.
Mm-hmm.
And Martin's accusing her of loving Stephen. And
he asks her where her kind of loyalty lies between the two of them.
Right.
And she says an interesting thing here to Martin, which is that she actually thinks that Martin and Stephen are more similar than they think.
Yeah, like the same person.
They're kind of the same personality. It's just they've each come up in a different way.
Yeah, like he is the younger Martin, and Martin is the older Stephen.
Because he asked her, like, what do you even see in him? What would you desire about him? And she's like, well, actually, the things I like about him, I also like about you. And kind of her conclusion at the end of all of this is that it's winner takes all.
Yeah.
If Martin wins, she'll be with Martin. If Steven one-ups him somehow, she'll be with Steven.
Yeah. But Martin says that if I can't have you, I'll kill you.
Yep.
Basically.
Yeah, he says if Steven takes this castle, he's going to leave a widow.
Yep. It's obviously true love. So I like this scene because we see Hawkwood stumbling out of the tent. And he gets the surgeon's tools because the surgeon wouldn't do what he's supposed to do. And he just starts lancing his own boils.
Dude, Hawkwood's fucking badass, man.
He's a fucking trooper.
He's out here level 20 fighter, man. Just gunning it.
Okay, so then we see Steven's war machine being pushed toward the castle.
Which is fucking lame.
And if you do not expect a big wooden bunny rabbit to be coming up to this castle, then you have not been watching the right movies. You've made poor choices in life. The entire time they're constructing something, I just see in my head Lancelot, Galahad, and I jump out of the rabbit. But yeah, it's like this big, basically, like almost like a big turtle shell type of thing.
It is Trojan horse-esque.
Yeah. But they're like, maybe it'll burn. The mercs are like shooting flaming arrows at it. But it's pretty fresh wood.
They kind of layered it too.
Yeah, it's green wood. It's not going to burn too well. So they're like, oh, it's not burning. What are we going to do? And I don't know how much time was spent here. It seems like just one night. But they got a lot of work done in one night.
Yes.
Because Steven starts like, horses ride out and they're pulling these pulleys and Steven's pulling these levers. And it's basically a transformer. It's like a wooden transformer. And this like siege ladder comes out. Like an extendable, like a modern firefighter ladder. Starts extending out to the battlements.
Tiffany immediately was like, okay, this is so fucking rickety. They're never going to take the castle with this. And I was like, dude, you could just go up there and like kind of corral them and kill them one by one as they come up the ladder. And it's,
right.
Yeah. Come on, Steven. but again, I guess this is his lack of like real world experience.
And I understand what they're trying to do. It's like this modern knowledge, the technology has an advantage over the barbarism and ignorance. But yeah,
it really feels like a Bugs Bunny skit or something.
It's way too complicated to have been done in that short of amount of time. Mm-hmm. They would have been lucky to build a trebuchet in that much time.
But the funny thing is rather than just meeting them up there and kind of like killing them one by one, Martin wants to make it sort of hurt his ego in a way.
And I do love this.
So they made one of those rolling bombs.
Yeah, Martin just takes a page out of Steven's book and says, all right. And he's rolling this, and it looks like a bigger bomb too.
And he rolls
Martin's is bigger, obviously.
He rolls it right up beside that thing.
Yep.
Sets it off.
He runs off, and there's this nice explosion. It explodes all nice.
But Steven was leading the charge up the ladder, so he actually gets into the castle. But the collapse of the siege engine, like, drops him in there. Yep.
And we're seeing a bunch of the men on fire, burning. All the mercs come out, just start killing everybody.
Yep. Slaughter him down.
Agnes is looking around for Steven, but can't find him. Oh, and the cardinal, who's been starting to kind of doubt his faith a little bit, sees Martin standing in front of this burning wheel behind him. Yeah. And it makes him look like Saint Martin.
Yeah, he's like, maybe I was wrong. Maybe that wasn't a sign. But then that reinvigorates his fervor.
So the only survivor of the party, the father, George, whatever his name was, heads back to camp. Hawkwood's there. And it tells him what happened. And Hawkwood sees that dog.
Yep.
And it's festering with boils. Mm-hmm. So he goes up and kills it, saying that it will help him.
And he knows he has to go back now and talk to Arnolfini and get more troops.
Yeah.
But he has a little plan he's going to put into motion.
Mm-hmm. So that night the mercs are putting on a little shadow play.
Yeah, this was fun. I liked this.
Yeah, it was nice. And Obrecht's taking it so seriously. But commotion happens, something falls, and we see Steven up in a tree.
Yeah.
Right above them. He's been trying to hide this entire time.
And again, it's just like fucking Steven, man. Like, how many ways could you get out of this castle?
It gets worse for him, too.
And you're kind of trying to climb the tree that's right beside the mercenaries.
It gets so bad for him.
Man, it frustrates me.
Mm-hmm. So they get him and they're torturing him, and Agnes is calling him a dog.
They shackle him up.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you could tell she hates doing this, but it's the only way she's going to survive.
Right.
And now a question is, does this make Agnes like selfish? I mean, the urge for self-preservation is pretty strong.
Sure.
Because I remember when I was younger and watched this, when I was younger and more naive, much like Steven, back in my teenage years, I was so pissed off at Agnes.
I think to a degree you could feel that way. Yeah.
But I also think that is I mean, she's doing what she has to do.
Right.
You know, I don't think you can get that mad at Agnes. And there's conflict there for sure, because she does have some sort of feelings for Martin, whatever they may be. But I like that conflict. Now as an older, more experienced person,
now that you're the Martin,
I know. I wish. I mean, wait. No, I don't really mean that. I guess I like Rutger Hauer. He's cool. Yeah. Anyway, so they chain him up. Summer's like cutting at him. They use him for target practice.
Yeah, they really fucking meme this dude.
Yeah. They put an arrow through his hand. And were you getting Robocop vibes here?
I actually said to Tiffany, I was like, dude, this is like when they gunned down the guy in Robocop.
Yeah. It's like the dry one for Robocop. It really is. So Martin hands this huge ass fucking matchlock pistol to Agnes and says, "Hey, shoot him."
Yeah, prove your loyalty to the group.
And she's like trying to hold it up, but it's really heavy. And he takes his sword and like holds it still for her. Yeah. And she's pulling the trigger.
Yeah, you see the hammer start to move.
But however, she is stopped because this huge chunk of bloody meat falls onto the gun.
Yeah, it makes her drop it.
And suddenly it's like raining chunks of dead dog into the courtyard.
Huckwood with his remaining men are catapulting the dead dog chunks into the castle.
Yeah, and they see like a big dog's head come down. And Steven knows the score. He's like, oh shit, this is that infected dog.
And surprisingly, he actually tells Martin straight up. He's like, hey, that dog's got the plague. If you leave it in here and you don't do anything about it, everybody's going to get sick.
Yeah, we're all going to die. Yeah. Right. I love how they're just slinging chunks of meat out of this catapult they made. It's fantastic. So everyone on the Mercs start freaking out. They're like, oh, the plague.
And they want to abandon the castle.
Yeah, they're like, let's get out of here. But Martin says, we have to stay. We'll just burn the meat, burn our clothes. Everything will be fine.
Yeah. He's not wrong.
Wear our masks. You know, use our...
It's like nothing's changed. All these years, nothing's changed.
No. So Martin's kind of taking Agnes away, and he's like taunting in front of Steven, like, I got your chick.
He
man,
really taunts him.
He's a prick. But Steven sees this chunk of meat that they missed.
Yeah, one little piece.
So he's got like a stick or something. He hits it with it, right?
Yep.
And he tosses it into the well that's nearby.
Which Agnes sees.
Yep.
And he tells her, you can decide whether you want to tell the mercenaries or not.
Yep. It's time to choose. So it's like even he's gotten the impression that maybe she is conflicted. Maybe she kind of likes this life, you know?
I mean, now that not everyone's trying to rape her 24/7, that definitely improves the mercenary life a little bit.
Things have gotten somewhat better, yes.
That part helps. I mean, Summer's still just creeping the fuck out of every scene he's in, but...
Yep. So the next morning, they're all like hungover and shit, having some breakfast, drinking some of the well water.
Yep, they're pulling it right up out of the well.
Yeah, and Steven's just grinning ear to ear as they're over there drinking the water.
And this is the part where I feel a little more conflicted on Agnes as far as what you were saying, because she's watching the mercenary company drink it.
Yeah.
And she's kind of going down the row watching each of them.
Right.
And at first it's like Celine, so she already hates her. She's like, whatever, I'm glad that she took a drink.
Yeah.
But the little boy.
Yeah, like the kid, you know, and the other people who have been nicer to her, the ones who weren't trying to rape her.
Yeah.
That's what passes for nice in medieval times.
I mean, the kid, though, really got me, because I was like...
Yeah.
I mean, he is with them, right? But he is kind of an innocent, right? He was just born into this.
He doesn't have a lot of agency, much like herself.
Yeah, but she just lets him gulp it down.
Yep.
And it's not until it gets to Martin, and then at Martin...
Yeah, she knocks it out of his hand. And like almost immediately, Celine begins to choke and vomit.
Which this is another kind of an error in the film, but I get it's for dramatic purposes, but it needs like at least a day for it to like...
Yeah, it wouldn't start affecting them immediately, sure.
It's like the super plague or something.
But whatever, I'll hand wave that.
It was a super spreader event.
Yeah. I buy that over the big wooden contraption that Steven somehow built in one night. So yeah, they find the big chunk of the dog meat in the jug and realize what's happened. And then they like turn on Martin.
Yeah.
They're like, you led us to this. This is your fault.
Stay.
Yeah, even the Cardinals like, fuck you, buddy. And they decided to throw him down into the well.
Yep. And true to her form, Agnes joins right in.
Yep, like she's all concerned looking, and then they're like looking at her, and she starts ha ha ha, ha laughing, spits down on him and shit.
But she does something sneaky again.
Yeah,
she drops the key to Steven's chains down with Martin.
Yep.
Creating a situation where the two of them would have to work together to free one another.
All right. Yeah, so Martin tells Steven he's got the key. Martin throws it up, and it lands in the lip of the well. Steven cannot reach it. And,
yeah, I thought that was interesting, too, because he tells me, like, hey, I've got your key to get you out.
Right.
But I need help out of the well.
Yeah.
And then Steven's like, well, I need the key to get out if I'm going to help you up, so throw the key up first. Mm-hmm. And you think there might be a little, like, back and forth on that, but no, Martin just chucks it up.
Don't have much of a choice.
True.
I mean, really, what else are you going to do? They're both fucked if they don't do something. So, like, yeah, Martin's like, well, you better get me out of here so I can free you. So later that night, the Mercs are gathering loot as the storm's brewing outside. We got thunder and lightning.
And their plan now is to pack up and leave, like they wanted.
However, they're starting to show signs of the plague.
Yeah, they're not looking too hot.
Mm-mm.
And also, now there's no one to keep Summer in check.
Yeah.
So he's getting a little rapey again.
Yeah, sure is. So some of them are trying to leave, like Meal and what was his character's name? Bruno Kirby's character.
Oh, Orbic.
Orbic are like trying to leave, but then no, Orbic has the plague. He sees the pustules on him.
And there's a really sad moment where he tells Meal to go ahead and leave and survive.
But he won't do it.
Yeah.
Is this a reference to the AIDS epidemic? How so many lovers just stayed and, just...
Accepted it.
Yeah, accepted it, still had sex, whatever. They weren't going to let that stop them.
I don't know if they intentionally did that, but I think you can read it that way for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it makes a good metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But
we also get a very sad scene where the little kid talks to his mom, and she's like, "Mom, I don't feel good.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me?" And
she's like, "You'll be okay."
She kind of just scoops him up and tells him he'll be okay, and yeah.
But Orbrick and Meal drop a big golden cross on their way back into the castle, which Steven gets, and he uses that to throw. Man, he's really good at throwing. His throw percentage is like 90%.
He like his ability to calculate trajectories.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. I guess
I assume that's what they were doing.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because even when he has the cross, he's like holding it for a minute. And he's
he's like weighing it.
Yeah.
And there you go. See. But he throws it right into the bucket of the well. It goes down, so Martin can climb up the rope.
Right, because there was no way for him to really get the key with how things were.
And Martin does start to free Steven, but then they hear the approaching riders of Arnolfini's men coming.
Hawkwood has gone and rallied up the troops.
Yeah. And Martin's kind of like, oh, you betrayed me again. Screw you.
And Steven's left to fend for himself once more.
Mm-hmm. So Martin goes and finds Agnes in the castle. She says that she was coming for him and that she loves him. And he says, yeah, you love me whenever it suits you.
He's tired of her shit at this point.
Yep. So Celine dies, and Martin appears to them all, telling them that Arnolfini's men's out there, and they just sort of look at him and hand him a sword. Okay, now this part also brought me out of the movie. I grant you this. The next scene that happens.
Is this Steven's escape?
How Steven escapes.
Yeah, and I think Verhoeven even talked about that a little bit. That it was a little incredulous.
It's very incredulous. It could have been so much better. Okay, so what he does is like he's got his chain wrapped around a tree, and the lightning is brewing, and it strikes it, and it's like there's even this glow around the chain, like they animated in a glow.
Yes.
And there's like these sparks, and he's like, "Oh,
dude, it would fucking kill him, man."
That would fucking kill him.
There's no way.
If they at least just showed like lightning striking the chain, and maybe there's some sparks where it struck and it comes undone.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. But this continuous like, I
wanted it to be like the Home Alone scene when
he turns into a skeleton. Yeah. At the very least, there would have been like this horrible burn all the way around his neck, you know? Anyway, so he's free of his chain.
And he goes looking for Agnes.
He's still got the collar around him with the length of chain on it, though. But yes, he goes looking for Agnes. Meanwhile, Martin is parlaying with Arnolfini.
And Hawkwood's like, hey, man, it's over. You're done.
Yep.
Just surrender, return Agnes.
But he's like, hey, I got your kid, though. And he looks back and sees, fuck, Steven's gone. Damn it. I got nothing.
Well, yeah, because he says that, and then Arnolfini's like, all right, present Steven, we'll talk.
Yeah, and he's like, okay. Shit.
And the second they realize he doesn't have him, they just breach the gates and break him down.
So there's some fun scenes where Steven kind of uses a firework.
Yeah.
And uses it like spears Summer right through the eye, which is some nice violence. So I liked that.
Well deserved for him.
Oh, yeah. So the Steven opens the gates to his father and his men, and they come in. And then they just like impale cars.
Yeah.
Brian James gets fucked up here big time. Takes him forever to die, too.
And this is where we get the stair scene, right? Where, isn't it, Meal has already died?
Yeah, Meal and Orbrick they're running up the steps. Orbrick collapses from the plague. He's dead. The enemy soldiers are coming in.
Yeah. And Orbrick decides to make a stand.
Meal, decides to make a stand.
Yeah. Meal decides. And he almost immediately gets slaughtered, and he kind of collapses and lands.
No, man, he does himself, remember?
Oh, yeah, he braces against the wall, doesn't he?
Yeah, he runs himself through that sword.
Yeah.
And then dies next to
poignant and
Orbrick.
sad.
Yeah. So Martin is chasing Agnes.
Chases her up to the belfry, right?
Getting there, yeah. And the Cardinal's trying to kill Steven. Martin is telling her that he never cared about anyone before.
Not until he met her.
But then he starts strangling her on the bed.
Well, that was his promise to her.
It was. Steven uses the length of chain he has to bring down St. Martin's statue under the Cardinal.
Impaling him.
Store it right through the fucking neck.
Yeah. Pretty epic.
Yeah. So then he finds Martin, and he's like wrapping his chains around his neck, trying to choke him. You know, pulling the Leia and Jabba thing going here. They're both fighting. They're falling into the tub. Martin is tougher. He's a better fighter. He's got the advantage.
It's the upper hand.
But Agnes chooses, finally, and brains him with this big, heavy glass vase or something.
And as he sinks in the tub, she digs Steven out and doesn't even look back to see anything else and just ushers him out of the room.
Yep.
And meanwhile, the belfry has caught fire in the chaos.
Yep.
So everything starts to burn.
Yeah, but Martin's not dead. And he's getting out of the tub, and he's wandering around, seeing that everything's burning. His dead friends are all burning, the ones who haven't escaped. Support beams are falling down. They see him across a room, Steven and Agnes and them, as they're trying to get out. And Agnes kind of makes this motion like she's going to go toward him.
Yeah.
But then, like, the fiery beams come down, and we no longer see him. And Steven drags her out. And they're outside the castle, and it's burning.
They reunite with Hawkwood.
Yep. Steven tells Agnes that she was right about the mandrake. They kiss and embrace.
Have their little happy moment.
And then Agnes sees Martin up on the battlements, escaping through the chimney.
And he's got a big fucking sack of loot, man.
Big sack of loot.
He took everything he could carry.
And she says nothing.
Yep.
As he climbs out and escapes. The end.
What a curious ending.
Yes. So, you got any other interesting observations over there?
I have a lot of notes.
Okay.
So I've hit some along the way. Some more background on this. when Verhoeven decided he was gonna like do an English feature and stuff, Ryan Pictures kept wanting a war movie. One of his recent films from 1977 had been Soldier of Orange, and that like internationally had gone over very well, but he didn't really have anything like that in mind or ready. And so him and Soderman kind of took some of their notes from Flores and then briefly sketched out this idea of this project, and worked it up into the film.
Okay. It's still a war movie.
Yeah.
Just maybe a few centuries earlier than they thought it was going to be.
This was his last project in the Netherlands for like 2 decades, I think, before he went back and did any work there.
Mm-hmm.
He attended the Dutch Film Festival when this premiered, and then the very next morning he hopped on a plane to go to America and start working on Robocop. But I think officially that's like his American debut.
Man, from this to and I like this movie, but man, what a jump to Robocop, which is a Stone Cold classic.
Yeah, because this was a co-production between several countries.
Yeah.
Let's see. Verhoeven stated that this movie was his reaction to many films that, in his view, overly romanticized the Middle Ages. And there's plenty of examples you can cite for that, but he said that he wanted to show it as a period where brutality, disease, poverty, and hardship were common, and a natural, regular death of old age was a rare thing.
Well, does that pretty well.
I think so. Paul Verhoeven and Rutger Hauer had collaborated on several projects in the past. However, they didn't always get along the greatest.
Mm-hmm.
Tensions got really high during this production. They were constantly arguing. Even the crew got kind of mad at them because they would argue in a different language, and they would be like, "I'll argue in English."
At least that's
so at least we know what's
saying.
going on.
It wasn't Rutger Hauer upset about playing a villain again after Roy Batty. He didn't want to get typecast as a bad guy.
He did comment on that, yeah. But it got so bad that when they finished this film, they never worked together again.
That's sad.
They kind of just refused. In 2019, though, after Hauer passed away, Verhoeven did make a statement. He said that in the final years of his life, they had finally talked to one another, and they had made amends and sort of apologized and patched up.
That's good.
So at least...
Verhoeven must have seen Argento's Dracula and then reached out to Rutger Hauer to console him for being in such a piece of shit.
Dude, I'm so sorry. This was the first time on a film where Verhoeven decided he was not going to storyboard the entire movie. That had kind of been a classic thing that he would lean on. And he thought, you know what, for this one, I'm going to go a little more improvisational. We're just going to have the idea of things and block it out and see what happens.
Rarely a good idea. On a movie like this, of this scale, that's not a good idea.
And yeah, that was his assessment. He said after the film, he quickly regretted it, just due to the complex nature of some of the shots and the set pieces. Not blocking all that out ahead of time was a nightmare.
Right.
So there was this chaos between Hauer and Verhoeven. In general, with the cast, there was also a lot of chaos too. Some of the actors kind of wanted more screen time and screen presence, and so there were actually times they would like sort of shove each other, trying to get more into the frame of like a scene.
Nice.
To the point that some of the actors, while working on it, called the film Flesh and Blood and Elbows.
That's hilarious.
They also had a ton of adversities during the shoot. It was very difficult. It was a Spanish, American, and Dutch production, and they had cast members from each country that were primarily versed in that language.
Right.
And so there was a lot of confusing crosstalk that had to go on. Some of the actors were heavily using alcohol and drugs on the set.
What? I'm shocked.
There was lots of heavy wind. There was a big snowfall during one point. Some moments where it got like really like super cold some nights when they were shooting. And typical for Verhoeven, I think they started to go over budget.
Mm-hmm.
Verhoeven has often called it his worst filming experience of his life, and that after finishing the film, for a time he considered quitting making movies altogether.
Oh man, I'm glad he didn't.
I am also glad he didn't.
I don't want to live in a world without RoboCop and Starship Troopers.
Hell yeah. Just for those two films, like, could you imagine if we didn't have those? Jeez.
No, thank you.
Talking a little more about the movie and his inspirations, Verhoeven said he wanted to explore the idea of a confrontation between two former allies that were now opposed. He said he had always been disappointed in The Wild Bunch from '69, that the two enemies there never really meet face to face and have any kind of big showdown. Because there's the big clash at the end of any Western, but they
Right.
never really have that moment of like facing off with one another.
Yeah, but I think that was also the point. I mean, it's a deconstruction of the Western, but whatever. That's another discussion.
One of the scenes he had in mind for the movie that they didn't use was going to have Martin and Hawkwood kind of being like in a bath together, like kind of like a big open bath sort of thing, and they would be having this calm back and forth conversation about all the things that had transpired between them, and both would have a knife concealed, waiting for the moment to strike, but neither one kind of finding the right opening in the conversation.
It's a fun scene.
And then connected to that, this is more of like the pieces of the original idea. During the final castle siege, there would eventually have been a moment where, the dust kind of settles and it's just the two of them 1v1 for sort of like a final showdown right at the end. But that is where, like you said, Orion really wanted a love story. They really wanted a lead lady. They liked the idea of having like a love triangle thing going on. So a lot of this extra Hawkwood Martin stuff got cut and replaced for scenes with Agnes. And actually that bath scene got repurposed to the scene between Martin and her.
Yeah.
Where they're in the bath together.
All right.
And I think that's sad because I think the Hawkwood angle is like interesting.
I like that. I would like to see that movie. Yes.
Yeah. Let's see. We've hit all of those. Oh, the castle. The castle that's prominently featured. It's the
Castle Anthrax.
it's Belmonte Castle in Cuenca, Castilla-La Mancha, Spain.
Yeah, okay.
And it was also used in El Cid from 1961.
It's quite a handsome castle.
But speaking of that castle, Jennifer Jason Leigh said a lot of the castle scenes, it was so cold in there that during some of the nude scenes, they would have to cut and take a break because her hands and feet would turn blue.
Holy shit. Damn.
Speaking of Hawkwood, he was probably based on a real person, Sir John Hawkwood, who was in like the 1300s. And he had his own band of mercenaries known as the White Company.
Yeah, okay.
So he was sort of the model for this character.
Interesting.
Some more comments from Verhoeven I thought were funny. When they talk about sort of the themes of the film, and like one of it, of course, is about like loyalty, right? Because there's a lot of betrayals going on. And
Oh, yeah.
I think a central thing you're supposed to do is wonder about Agnes and what are her loyalties.
Right.
So one thing Verhoeven likes to make very clear when people think about the film is the only true loyalty that's shown throughout the whole film that stays and there's never any question or doubt or changes is the relationship between Miel and Orbic.
Yes. Yeah.
Which that kind of hits on some of the stuff you were talking about too. Verhoeven was never really a big fan of the way that Steven frees himself from the tree. And
Me either.
he said that looking back on it, it kind of makes the film lose a sense of its reality at that point.
Yeah, that and the siege engine, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Verhoeven has touched on Steven's torture by the mercenaries, and he actually says that it does feel like it's an echo of what he later did in Robocop.
Much less violent.
Yeah. This was Verhoeven's first run-in with the MPAA. Definitely not his last.
No, would not be his last.
Just to run it off, Robocop, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, Starship Troopers, all originally were given an X or NC-17 rating.
Showgirls.
Oh yeah, Showgirls.
That stayed with the NC-17 though, I think.
And the ones I named, all of those were ones that he then had to go in and cut to get them down to an R.
And were also big hits.
Well, we're all big hits, yeah.
Unlike this movie, which cost what, $6.5 million and made $100,000 in the U.S. box office.
Huge flop, undeniable flop.
It's amazing he was allowed to make another movie after this.
Yeah. But speaking of cuts, so there are some other versions of this where they've edited it in some way. So for UK cinema and video, they removed 38 seconds, and a lot of that was edits to the rape scene with Agnes. Years later, whenever they had a DVD release over there, they finally got those approved to be put in, which is nice. The R-rated US video version that was first released cut out some of the more explicit nudity of Jennifer Jason Leigh, especially during the rape scene. Same deal. They also cut down some of the lovemaking scene with Kathleen when she's with the soldier.
Just prudes.
Yeah. But of
all the
course,
violence is fine.
the 2004 DVD release in the U.S., all that footage got added back in. And
Yay!
today, if you pick up a copy of this film, it's
I think that's the one I've got on DVD.
the full deal.
Yeah. There's a blue out there, but I think it's foreign region. I'm not sure there's a domestic one.
There really should be a good domestic release now.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you said it was a flop, undeniably so.
Yeah.
Verhoeven's talked about that a little bit, and he said that the reason he thought it failed, was that it was too cynical and downbeat for viewers at the time.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it.
Especially the middle of the 80s. Look at what else was coming out around that time.
Right. Also, that was the period of stupid fantasy films, you know, that
sing-songy, like da-da-da.
Yeah.
Adventure-y.
Sure. Direct-to-video crap like Deathstalker and stuff like that. Although I actually like Deathstalker. I do like Deathstalker,
though, man. I'll give
Deathstalker 1 and 2 are awesome.
And I always like to pull a little bit of a critic or a scholar or someone has talked about a film. So this comes from a professor of film and literature, Douglas Kesey. I think he's at California Polytechnic State. And speaking of the film, he said it has no hero to root for and no happy fantasy elements to lighten.
Mm-hmm.
And none of that to take away from its unpleasantly realistic depiction of the Middle Ages.
Right.
Something that's a bit unique.
Yeah, that was one problem with the 80s, because it was like almost a direct response to the 70s, because everything was so downbeat and dour and like realistic.
Yeah.
But then in the 80s, everything had to be like this sugar coating, everything had to be like fun, and look how much fun we're having and how much cocaine we're doing, and woo!
And it's funny because in the 90s you did then get some of a flip back the other way again.
Man, the 90s were just artistically bankrupt for the most part, but yes.
Oh, come on.
No, there are some good things in the 90s. We've talked about this. But, yeah. Very good, very good.
There's one last little for fun thing I wanted to throw in here because it's very personal to me.
Oh.
This film was a big inspiration for now deceased, rest in peace, manga creator Kentaro Miura.
Yeah.
Best known for the manga Berserk. One of the all-time, I'm probably going to say the greatest dark fantasy manga ever to exist.
I've actually heard of that.
It's fucking amazing. You need to check it out if you enjoy fantasy at all in any capacity, whether you're an anime or a manga fan at all. I think it kind of transcends its own medium to do a very incredible story with amazing art. But in 2002, he won an award, the Tezuka Osamu Cultural Prize Award for Excellence, due to his work on Berserk. And then speaking of that win in 2003 during an interview, he was talking about some of the inspirations that fueled his creation of the series, and he actually said that Flesh and Blood was a big inspiration for him, and that the design of Berserk's protagonist, Guts, the titular black swordsman of the series, he was based off of Martin, Rutger Hauer's portrayal of him.
That's fun.
And when I kind of thought about it more when this film ended, I was like, there's really a lot of connective threads between Berserk and this film, where it's like one little element became like something that was blown up more in Berserk. And just to rattle through these some, trying to avoid some spoilers, they have this whole arc in it called the Golden Age arc that's about the main character's sort of life and how he grows up and becomes a mercenary and works in all these different mercenary companies. And that kind of echoes everything that's going on with Martin and his crew. But then it gets even a little more distinct, because the titular group he ends up joining is referred to as the Band of the Hawk or the Band of the Falcon. And so then that makes me think of Hawkwood.
Mm-hmm.
Little tiny tie there. And I won't get too into the spoilers on this, but a big plot point is that their leader of this mercenary company eventually betrays them all to his own benefit and sells them out. And that leaves a grudge between our protagonist and him that drives a lot of the story.
Interesting.
And even just other little things, like the way that the nun acts after she has been injured. There's a character in the series that goes through a very traumatic experience and gets kind of both physically and mentally scarred. And she kind of acts that same way, where she'll be maybe like a little calm and quiet, and then there'll be like a triggering factor that makes her kind of freak out,
right,
and just go crazy. So yeah, I was surprised to see like how much little pieces of DNA carried from that film into Berserk.
Interesting.
And it impressed me. Oh, and then of course the other final thing is that the main character Guts, he's known for just using a huge fucking giant sword.
Okay.
It's a bit bigger than Martin's. It's bigger than a person.
It's that anime big. Yeah.
That's where you get the anime vibe in there. But so even that kind of bled into it a little.
Okay.
Super cool.
Nice.
So this was your movie. What'd you think of it?
Well, I must like it, or I wouldn't have picked it.
Well, you never know.
But I didn't realize till recently that also the very next year, Jennifer Jason Leigh and Rutger Hauer would be in another movie together, where she is again terrorized by him. Do you know that movie?
Off the top of my head, it's a little fuzzy.
The Hitcher.
Oh yeah, fucking love that too.
Yeah, that's a great movie. Yeah. No, I like this movie. I think it's really good. I think it holds up pretty well from. Cause honestly, I haven't seen it for probably 20 plus years. And I mentioned before how I have a different feeling about it now than I did back then. Mm-hmm. I like its tone. I like its commentary about. I really think it's all about power. You know, the whole movie is about power, and the abuse of it.
Okay.
Like Arnold Feeney abuses his power as a ruler by promising the mercenaries the loot and then instantly reneging on it. Mm-hmm. They betray him, they get nothing. And of course, it spurs the mercenaries on to get revenge, and it just perpetuates more violence.
Revenge is like that, you know, but begets more revenge.
Right. Of course, Agnes, you know, as a woman at this time, she has very little power. So the only way she can control anyone is through their sexual interest, basically. Mm-hmm. And even though it's obvious that she's enjoying some of her newfound freedom, it's still ambiguous. Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of like a misbehaving teenager. Yeah. When they know they're doing something bad and wrong, but they're having a lot of fun doing it. And I guess she is a teenager.
Since they were trying to wet her off, I'm assuming so.
Yeah. No, like, even Stephen, he's powerless against his father. He doesn't wish for marriage, but he's forced into it. Mm-hmm.
And he actually kind of want to pushes for, like, what the new age is going to be. And he gets forced to kind of descend into the old ways of things.
Right. Even Hawkwood, he's at the mercy of Arnold Feeney. Mm-hmm. You know, everyone has power over everyone, and it's a bunch of people getting fucked over and abused, and I mean, that's life, right? That's governments, that's lords, that's authority, you know, I mean.
The more things change, the more they keep staying the same, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think it's a timeless message. Mm-hmm. It's a message that might become even more pertinent again in a few months.
Perhaps.
We seem to keep touching on this. Yes. I don't know if it's, like Tolkien said, I don't know if it's applicability versus, you know, metaphor or whatever, but anyway. Yeah, I like this movie a lot. There's some fun action. I like Rutger Hauer. He's great. Jennifer Jason Leigh, another good, brave performance. There's some good blood. There's some flesh. You know, it
flesh and blood.
It delivers what it promises.
Right in the title.
There's some adventure. I do think it's a bit too long. Yeah. The silly moments do take me out, like the siege engine and the whole lightning and the chain and all that. I mean, I agree with you. It would have been interesting to see that other script before they forced the love story on it. But I do think that's an interesting angle. I do think it makes for an interesting movie.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, I give it 3 stars.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't love it. I don't think it's a classic, but I think it's something that if you like medieval films, especially the dirty ones, you know, the more realistic ones, I think you should see it. I recommend it heartily. If you're a Verhoeven fan, you need to see it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just a good, fun, solid movie that I probably won't watch again for another 20 years.
Cool. Which, hey, every time we have a fantasy or even vaguely fantasy-related film, I feel like we always try to pair it to an RPG.
Sure.
So I want to throw that in real quick. I think for the gritty, grimy world that Flesh and Blood is, I would have to go with Morkborg.
Morkborg!
Our favorite from across the seas there.
Yep.
European fantasy RPG. It's lean, it's mean, it's very punk rock in its design.
I guarantee goddamn to you, the designers of that movie saw the game, saw this movie, and were influenced by it.
It has to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you watch this movie and you're like, I want to play this,
Morkborg
is the answer.
Morkborg. But what did you think of the movie?
So, I think there's a lot of flaws in this film. We touched on a lot of them as we went. Some of plotting, some of pacing, some of just logic. But despite that, I think there's so much stuff to love here that in a lot of ways it overshadows and kind of just makes me even forget that I had any hang-ups with the film at all.
Okay.
I love that it's set in 1501. That's such an interesting time period.
It's a very specific time period.
It gets away from a lot of the trappings of what a typical Middle Ages set fantasy film would be. Mm-hmm. And it makes it really unique and interesting. Like, even Tiffany, she wasn't super into the film at first.
Yeah.
She didn't intend to watch it. And I think it was when they were doing the falconing thing and there were the covered wagons. And she was like, why are there covered wagons in this film? And I was like,
they had covered wagons.
And I was like, well, it's 1501. And she's like, well, I thought it was like Middle Ages though. And then we were talking about like, oh, that time period, it's like there's gunpowder, there's muskets. Mm-hmm. There are covered wagons. And she eventually started watching it. And she actually liked it quite a bit too.
That's good. Excellent.
So I like that weird vibe of like, it is the Middle Ages, but it is modernizing. And you're starting to see how this like technology is changing the way that world operates.
Yet the barbarism remains.
Mm-hmm. I think that I love that it's this gritty, darker take on a medieval film. I'm right with you. Like a lot of those like very shiny, sheeny 80s fantasy films.
Yeah.
Some I like just because they're goofy and
Sure,
they're fun.
yeah.
But like this like felt like, ooh, there's some substance here going on.
Right. Felt real.
Felt real, felt authentic. I do wish it were that other movie, the story of Hawkwood and Martin and their rivalry and how they kind of like descend into insanity against each other. But I don't hate Agnes. I just feel like the love triangle, it's a little like meh. I don't know how much I care about it. Mm-hmm. Especially because Steven is a very weak character in a lot of ways to me. He has this cool premise of the whole like, I want to embrace knowledge and science.
Sure.
And
he's the good boy, and Martin is the really, really bad boy.
And I get that, but I was just like, I don't know. And even some of the stuff with Agnes, I feel weird about, like the fact that she lets the kid die.
Oh, the kid doesn't die. Remember at the end, we didn't touch on this.
He does survive, doesn't
we
he?
see the surgeon because he's finally learned. Mm-hmm. He's lancing the boils. He, the kid, the mother, and the other lady of the night survives. She's also being taken by a bunch of the soldiers, but she seems to be having a good time. So I guess happy ending for her.
Yeah. But presumably she's condemning him to die in that moment,
right?
From her perspective.
Sure.
So I feel weird about that.
Fuck that
kid. Sometimes I find her both such an interesting and layered character, and then also very hard to like.
Right.
Which again, you had talked about that a little bit.
I think it's the point.
First watch.
Right.
Yeah, that is the point, and that is also why it's kind of good. So I think that's the saving grace for me, is that even though it's like I like this other idea better, I think in executing what's a very, very standard, very like studio, oh, there must be a romance with a leading lady plot.
Right. This is not The Princess fucking Bride.
Right.
You know?
To have that slapped at you and you have to do it, I think he chose a very interesting way to go about it.
Yeah.
That both satisfied the studio but gave us a neat thing to talk about and think about.
Right.
And so in the end, I actually gave this 4 fucking stars.
Oh my god, you like it more than me. That's surprising.
This is good.
Wow.
I think more people need to see this. I don't hear it talked about too often.
I might give it 3.5. I'm changing mine to 3.5.
My enthusiasm has gotten the extra half star out of you.
Yep.
Okay.
It's official. 3.5.
I think it's solid. I think there should be more films in this style, in this stripe.
See, you had me worried for a while. I knew you'd like this movie. Trickery.
I like to keep it cagey on you. There's one more thing we got to do, though, before we go into our wrap-up. I think it's mandated of us. I got to know. What's your favorite Paul Verhoeven film?
Robocop.
Robocop,
easily Robocop. I love Starship Troopers.
Okay, so Robocop would also be mine. I think that's just fucking obvious for everyone. So what would be your like runner-up or an honorable mention that you want to give some love to?
A Verhoeven?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely Starship Troopers.
Okay. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Mine's a curveball because I know this isn't a very beloved film, but I fucking love, start to finish, stone cold to the bone, Hollow Man.
You know, I saw it in the theater, and it left me a little cold, but I also never revisited it.
It's my favorite adaptation of The Invisible Man beyond the original.
Right.
And I love how like gritty and mean-spirited it is.
I do like Kevin Bacon in it a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I need to rewatch it.
I think it's so fun how his like psychosis starts to go out of control once he is invisible,
Yeah,
and he's kind of wrestling with
it's
the
a real
fact
shit,
that like
yeah.
no one can see me, and
Yeah, I can do whatever I want.
at first there's the fun of like I can do whatever, I can creep on women,
Yeah, at least Claude Rains was happy just murdering people.
but then it starts to get like, well, no one can see me, I can't interact with anyone anymore,
Right.
and it starts to like tear down his mind.
Yeah.
Love it.
Okay.
Super cool.
I'll give him that a shot sometime.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of this one.
Yeah, but we're going to have another movie for next time.
We are, and I'm going to throw you a curveball, I think. This is one of those, I think a lot about
It's not a baseball movie, is it? Oh, God.
We're going to watch Field of Dreams.
Oh, fuck.
No. I think about a lot of the times you've picked a film and you're like, I've seen this before, and I kind of liked it, but there's some stuff I don't like about it, and I kind of just want to go back to it.
Right.
And I feel that way about this film. And I
Okay.
feel like maybe it's a little underlooked at. Maybe not so many people have talked about it.
Okay. Bracing
And
myself.
I don't know if you've seen it or not, but we'll find out right here as soon as I tell you about it. We're going to take a look at a horror film. Swinging us back to horror.
Okay.
We're going to go to 2017.
Uh-oh.
And we're going to be talking about, directed by Kevin Grudert, Jackals.
I have not seen Jackals. It's on my list.
Now, I'll hit you with the synopsis.
Okay.
Set in the 1980s, an estranged family hires a cult deprogrammer to take back their teenage son from a murderous cult. But they find themselves under siege when the cultists surround their cabin, demanding the return of the boy.
I like it already.
Kevin Grudert, you might know that name. He's directed a few Saw films. He did Saw 10, Saw 7, and I think 8.
Okay.
Was that 3D?
I have no
No, he
clue.
did 6 and 7, and then 7 is the Saw 3D technically. Yeah.
Okay.
So 6, 7, and 10.
Okay. I know you're a fan of those films.
I am.
Jackals. Okay.
Jackals.
Is this easily watchable?
It is. It's available on Peacock if you have that.
I do have
It's on
Peacock.
Tubi if you're desperate. You don't got any other options. It's also on Freevee, which is another of those free but with ads platforms.
Right.
So one way or the other, you can easily get at it.
Excellent. Excellent.
And yeah, we'll see what happens. I feel like this is one of those ones. I remember when it came out, and it's got a cool fucking poster, dude. I'll be excited when I share like the teaser for this, just to share that poster and let people look at it. I love it. It's got that like dark, the blue for night thing going on, and there's just kind of the shadowy outlines of the killers.
Oh, okay. I see it. Yes.
Really cool look. And I remember it was announced.
Oh, yeah.
I think they gave it like a very limited theatrical thing, and then it kind of got dumped right to like a home media release and streaming.
The cover has like the Strangers vibe.
It does, yeah. And I was so intrigued by the cover, I actually just blind bought the Blu-ray.
That and the Birthday Massacre vibe.
And watched it like the first week it came out.
Okay.
I've never gone back to it. It's always kind of stuck with me. I remember there's stuff I like and dislike about it. And it's been enough now that it's kind of hazy to me, so
Interesting.
I thought it would be fun to go back for.
All right. I'm in the mood for, horror flick.
Yeah, a little home invasion-y in a way.
I like
We
those.
got some cultist action going on.
Nice. Okay. All right. I'm down.
All right, yeah. Look forward to Jackals. Mm-hmm. But that being said, we have reached the end of another episode, and as always, we want to know what you think. Have you seen Flesh and Blood? Let us know. Tell us what Paul Verhoeven films you enjoy. There's plenty to love out there.
Sure is.
Send us your movie recommendations, films you think we should check out and give a watch. After Jackals, we're going to need another one, so we need to feed the beast, keep the engine turning. You can reach out and hit us up at
Genre exposure?
fuck that up. You can reach out to us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. You can send us an email at genreexposure@gmail.com. We love it. Anytime, send us anything you want. Just tell us about a random film you watched, man. Whatever, it's cool. I noticed that Erica left us a little comment on the last episode, and in that Black Cat release from Vinegar Syndrome, the essay booklet, she's got a little piece in there.
Oh.
And she talks about some other Nikita knockoff films.
Okay.
So I'm going to raid that here soon and go watch a bunch more.
Very cool. All right.
Excited for that as well.
I'll report back.
Yes. But otherwise, you have been listening to Genre Exposure.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal, providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.